Welcome back to another episode of Medussa Muses. This episode, I'd like to talk about restorative justice and how it's an effective tool for rebuilding Black communities and dealing with so-called ex-white supremacists. Before I can get into the substance of this discussion, it's important to understand basic terminology. Since I'm talking about restorative justice, let me define what it is for you. Restorative justice is a form of justice that centers on healing the harm caused by the offender first and foremost, and then concerns itself with the rehabilitation of the offender. This is important to understand, as many have believed restorative justice to be when the offender says sorry and we all accept the apology and move on. Later, I will explain more about how rehabilitation works and how it looks like, but for now, let's focus on restorative justice is about healing or restoring the victim. Restoring the victim is not going to be a one-solution-fix-all every single time. Some crimes are simple in how you can restore the victim, while others require more thought. For example, restorative justice for a victim of theft is easier to discern because it will look more like giving the stolen property back and taking the steps to ensure that the theft doesn't happen again, whether that's enrolling the thief in some kind of program to give them access to job resources or government programs to help with poverty, or simply locking the serial thief away and getting them help with their kleptomania. But a case involving physical harm, such as assault or rape, will look vastly different and require more thought to how to restore the victim and rehabilitate the offender. But it's important to make a note that rehabilitation will not come at the cost of the victim, but with the victim in mind. So whatever the solution, it will have the victim's welfare at heart. If a violent person cannot be rehabilitated and puts the victim in danger, then restorative justice is not possible. That's when we must consider a punitive punishment. One form, which we are all familiar with, is the prison system, where people are locked into small cells and forced to endure isolation and hostility from other prisoners, and even prison staff. Worse, the treatment of prisoners is inhumane, but we allow it because we've been socialized to believe that criminals forfeited their rights by breaking the law. This is punitive justice, justice that inflicts pain on the offender because the victim also suffered. Thousands of people are sitting in prison because they've broken the law, or because they've been targeted by a racist system that guides the police. This form of justice, while useful, is being abused by the American prison system to break people down and create repeat offenders for their business needs. This abuse has led to the continued genocide of Black communities, which are small and highly interconnected. Removing one person from the community creates a ripple effect that weakens community bonds and lowers morale for Black success. This is why I'm against our current prison system, and am a proponent of restorative justice and prison abolition. The state of the current prison system is simply too abusive and predatory with no concern for the welfare of actual people, whether they be criminal or victim. And I support any system that focuses on using restorative and punitive justice as needed. I'm particularly more interested in how restorative justice can be used to heal Black communities, which are the main victims of the American justice system. I think it would be immensely better if nonviolent crimes were treated as community issues rather than crimes against the state. After all, drug addiction is an issue that affects the community, and the people who sell them should be dealt with on a community level, whether that be making sure they sell clean drugs that won't kill people, or helping that dealer find another job to support themselves with. As for addicts, they do not need to be tortured with jail time to get clean. What they need is treatment for the trauma that they're suffering from, which makes them rely on drugs to get by. I'm also more interested in seeing thieves return the goods they stole and receiving resources so that they do not have to steal again. A lot of these crimes could be reduced with community service and outreach, that it's ridiculous that we lock people away for minor offenses. And this method of rehabilitation is not a slap on the wrist. It's not a reward. Rehabilitation is hard and takes time. I imagine it would take months for an addict to recover and make amends to anyone they may have hurt while in the throes of their addiction. I know that a thief wouldn't be trusted immediately after returning the property and committing to not thieving anymore. These issues result in violation of trust, and rehabilitation involves doing what's necessary to regain that trust. And trust should not be expected from the victims of these crimes at all. Neither should forgiveness. Because rehabilitation is an ongoing process where you will always be working towards doing better and showing others that you've changed. And you want to be a member of the community. It's tiring but necessary work when you've harmed someone or shattered someone's trust in you. This is why I get particularly heated when I see people bastardize restorative justice online. Whenever an ex-white supremacist or ex-bigot gets called out for not doing enough or doing something offensive, there's always a chorus of people crying out restorative justice, but meaning forgive and forget. Because real restorative justice would allow for these individuals to be called out and demand that individual follow up with better behavior and actions that could restore their victims. In the case of a racist content creator, they could stop saying the N-word, apologize for hurting the Black community, donate money to Black organizations that combat racism, and uplift Black voices that speak out about racism. It is not the person just saying sorry and posturing about how their videos already help Black people, even though Black people have come forward and said the contrary. Rehabilitation is not about how the person can look better, but how they can become a better person. It's not a redemption arc for your favorite content creator, but a tool for accountability that will uplift communities. On a systematic level, it could rehabilitate nonviolent offenders so that instead of becoming slaves in the prison system, they can contribute to a better community. On an interpersonal level, it can result in safer communities. But hopefully, after listening to this, you're a bit more open to restorative justice and will do more research on it now that you're aware of it. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Medussa Muses. If you enjoy listening to it, consider becoming a patron on Patreon or making a one-time donation on Ko-fi. Until next time, stay cozy.